So how do we read tarot cards intuitively? I know a lot of people are interested in using this, but they're not really sure how to tap into their intuition, especially if they are not somebody who has been working with their psychic senses and, training and developing that. So the good news is that you can still use your intuition to read cards, even if you don't see dead people, or you're not clairaudient. There's a lot of different options that you do still have. So if that's something that you're interested in, these are some things that you can do in order to kind of help, grow the skill. So the first thing I would say is, when you're looking at the cards, if you want to read stuff intuitively, you need to kind of clear your mind. You need to take off any preconceived notions of what you think the card should be or anything like that. You need to kind of start with a blank slate and then take a good look at the card. And there's a couple different things that you can pay attention to that will give you some messages and information about the card. One of the easiest things to do is to look at the card and see how it makes you feel when you look at it, right? It's the same thing as going to an art museum. How do you feel when you look at that Monet? Like, what is it? What sort of emotions does it inspire in you, right? So take a look at that card and see how you feel when you look at it. Does it make you happy? Does it make you feel warm and fuzzy? Does it make you afraid? Does it make you uncomfortable, right? That is going to tell you a little bit about the overall general energy of the card. And I bet that if you look up the actual meaning, it'll probably be similar to the feeling that you are getting, right? The other thing that you want to do if you want to read cards intuitively is you also really want to take a good look at all of the objects that are in the card, right? The more detailed cards are going to be a little bit easier to do this with. That's why I usually kind of tell people or suggest or recommend starting with the traditional Rider-Waite deck because it'll be easier to kind of learn a lot of other decks after that. But if you feel more comfortable with whatever deck it is that you choose, pick that one. But if you want to read intuitively, the more details that are kind of on the card, the easier it will be for you to kind of be able to get stuff off of that intuitively. So if you look at the card, there's a lot of different pieces to the card. There's a lot of different images all over the place. And those images can give you some information about the card as well. So when you look at the card, see where your eye goes or where your attention is sort of drawn and focus on that item. And then the second part that you're going to have to do to this is, what does that item represent to you, right? This is where kind of building a dictionary of meanings in our head is kind of helpful. And we already have a pretty basic one most of the time, A lot of times if you see an apple, you'll think of health, right? Or sometimes too we think of teachers, right? Because everyone brings their teacher an apple. If we think of books, that's knowledge and learning. If we see an animal in there, it could be, if you see a dog, it might be love and companionship because that is something that we get from our pets. So you can use these little details in the card to intuit information. Now, of course, if you actually know the definition of the card and you understand what some of the symbols are in there, you get an extra power punch when you are using your intuition because you'll have a little bit better understanding of the card than somebody who's just going in without that. But you can still do it either way. So those are some good kind of things you can do when you are looking at these cards to get some extra information, and it's a really good way you can read intuitively. Sometimes too, when we look at a card, we just get a certain thought in our head. It just pops up, A lot of times when I see the Emperor card, it's come up quite often in readings, I'm like, your dad's mad at you, or it's something about your dad, right? And so for me, that's kind of just intuitively, I know that if I'm not resonating with the by the book meanings, that could be another intuitive meaning for me. So if you are getting something like that doesn't seem like maybe it fits completely, trust your gut and go with that because that's your intuition telling you that energy is coming off the card and wants to be expressed. So that's another way that you can kind of intuitively read off of the cards. And the last thing I would say too is just don't filter yourself, especially when you're starting, because that validation that you get is going to allow you to trust yourself more. So even if it seems weird or if it seems silly, just say it. And ask the person, be like, I know this is really weird, but I'm getting this impression. How do you feel about that? Or does that make sense to you? And a lot of the times it usually does. And then you're like, oh, and then you learn to trust your intuition, whether or not you are developing your other psychic skill sets, right? So hopefully that's some kind of good basic tips to get you up and moving of how you can look at a card and connect with it in a little bit different way versus just, card and definitions, right? So if you have any questions, please let me know, but I hope you try this out. It definitely does give you a little extra punch in a lot of your readings. Until next time, thank you guys so much for watching and have an absolutely beautiful day.